So we're going to start off, we've got two meetings today. So first off, we've got our Sustainable Tairawhiti Committee meeting, which is a relative small agenda, but two chunky items we'll discuss. And then we're going to move on to our Extraordinary Council meeting, where we'll talk about GHL. So to start us off, I'm just going to ask Councillor Wharehinga to do a karakia, and then we will get cracking. Let's all stand.
Morena tātou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, i raro i te āhuatanga o tēnei tauhou, kuri noa te whare, me noa tātou. E eo o ngā mano, a tēnei te whakamoimata ki a koe mo tēnei huwinga a mātou, arahina mai kia au, ki te tika, ki te puni a mātou, tukua mai te wairua tapu hei manaaki, te āwhi e te āki ki a mātou, anei mātou e tūhu nei mui toaroaro, ka tuku i tēnei inoi i rongi i te ngō tō mātou kai whakore i Ukraiti. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So I do have an apology from Councillor Warsnop for today. She did send 2 emails to me with some questions or issues she wants raised, so I will bring that up as we go forward. I'll move her apology. Do I have a second? Councillor Faulkner, all in favour, contrary, carried. So next we move on to our declaration of interests. We do not have any of those. Let's take a look at our minutes. I'll take you to page 3. Okay, we'll come back to those. That is so true. Thank you for that. Action sheet. Let's go to page 4. Thank you. So there are some actions on our action sheet on page 5 that's been brought over from previous time. Any issues or questions around our action sheet on page 5 and 6? Excuse me, just put your hand up. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, what is happening with the Gisborne Yacht Club requesting council take over management of the Coati boat track?
Thank you.
I will have to defer to staff when the appropriate manager is in the room at the moment. He's not currently here. Councillor Robinson, I'll come back to you on that.
Any other questions around our action sheet? If not, we go to Councillor Seymour.
Technical question.
Yes.
What happened to the last set of future Tairawhiti minutes of the last council? If this is, I mean, I appreciate this is the first meeting of under the name Sustainable Tairawhiti, but we've got action items on there from the last council. So what's the formal status of the last set of minutes of future Tairawhiti?
My understanding is that they went, so at the last council meeting, all the minutes from those, the committees were provided there. So we now
finalise them all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We go to leave of absence, none of that. Acknowledgement and tributes, we don't have any. Do we have any public deputations today? No. No extraordinary business, no notice of motion, no adjourned business. So I ask you all to go to page 8, where we will have a discussion around our updated spatial plan, and I invite Ms. Kohere to come and assist us and answer any questions that councillors might have. So we are on page 8. Do you want to give us a short overview, and then we can open the floor for questions?
Kia ora tātou. Trying to contain my excitement to finally put this in front of you. Again, the report demonstrates the process that we've been through. It's been a fairly collaborative process to get this far. Again, just want to acknowledge the staff as well for the work that they've put in here to reach out to our collective communities, but also just around the purpose of the plan is to set the strategic direction for your decision making, obviously over the next 3 years, but also into the future, and sets a clear vision for the Tairawhiti. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the floor? Councillor Cranston and then Councillor Burdett.
Yeah, really interested in implementation and how that's going to go about. I see one of the risks of adoption is uncertainty of implementation. So I just, it talks about a cross-agency collaboration. So who is the cross-agency collaboration and what are the plans with implementation?
So we have a 3-month timeframe to get an implementation plan back to council. Obviously, we're working with, there are identified stakeholders, but with the clarity and outcomes that hopefully you adopt in this plan, those leaders and who we collaborate with becomes a lot clearer.
Councillor input into that? Would we be part of that cross-agency collaboration?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just a few little things while I've got it. It talks about the northern port being removed from the plan, but there's also submissions in the plan that needs to be going ahead. So under what basis did we remove that? Was it a squeaky wheel scenario? Because we've also got some squeaky wheels out there wanting to have it still in there.
Through the chair, we've addressed that by retaining the blue highway and what that looks like. The point of contention has been obviously Te Whanua Tūwhakairi Ora, the hapu that is based in Wharekahika. Conversations with them have led to around a hapu-led commercial wharf as opposed to a port. So the removal of reference to a port but retaining blue highway, we think, and it's not firm, it's an aspiration to explore and understand what transportation into those northern areas of Tairawhiti look like. So even putting a reference to a port would be a limited view, as where we're not there yet.
Okay. Tourism Eastland was kind of a strange statement for them to make, actually. They had a statement there that there was a lack of knowledge of the importance of tourism in the area, so I thought that was strange that they would be making that. And did you get to the bottom of that? Because it says in the notes, it says, well, we don't know why they're saying that.
We're awaiting the, and I don't believe this is in secret, awaiting the development and the publication of a tourism strategy for the region. So we suspect would be engaged as a stakeholder in the development of that plan. So, and that would be without a clear strategy that we can understand and reflect in this plan, that would be the meaning behind that comment.
All right, and the rural intensification of Wainui. I was quite surprised to see that there because there hasn't been a lot of further work out with Wainui under the guise of intensification. So I think that how has that decision come about?
Again, and the CE may be able to help me here in terms of the longer term history. I understand it has been flagged as potential for intensification. It is land that is available, not necessarily zoned to support intensification, but it's flagged there as a potential opportunity. With it will come challenges, but it's signalled as there's potential there. And that as an aspirational plan, we need to flag where the potential is for the region. It's not necessarily fixed, but I understand there is a long history of that it is potential for intensification and not.
Okay, and the last aspiration was 20% of city residents walk or cycle to work, which I think is low, but I would like to see an 80% of the children cycle or walk to school. Because that's where we're going with our cycle walkways. That's our kind of aim, but it only, so I wouldn't mind seeing that in there too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Burdett, and then Councillor Foster, and then Councillor Seymour.
Two questions, one pretty mundane and another one a bit controversial.
Microphone.
First one, in terms of people change and times change, there will be an opportunity going forward for council to review aspects of this spatial plan.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're looking at 5-year review term, unless I guess statutory provisions come and direct us.
The second one is the question of water ownership. How are we as a council, or has anyone grappled with the question as yet, going to deal with that? Because that's pretty topical.
Yes, again, we're waiting guidance from central government. Council has a position through its current water plan around allocation. Again, there are aspirations and challenges referenced in this plan, which should give yourselves as decision makers at such time when you need to make that decision, some of the outcomes you're trying to achieve in terms of water allocation. So until that time, we get some clear direction. We're working on frameworks and developing our relationships with other key stakeholders with how we might reflect that.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to congratulate staff on the plan, the consolidated one. Certainly a big improvement from the 440 odd page one that we had, and a lot easier to read for the average person. So I read through this and it was really, really good. But my question is that there's a lot of stuff in there when it comes to consenting in particular, like our planners and everybody is working off our existing plans, and we've got aspirational plans that probably conflict with what our plans are at the moment. Now, there's going to be obviously timing issues, but my question is, are staff looking at this, at the spatial plan and making decisions for future development in areas based on our aspirations for the future? And the other thing, if there is time allocations put on the existing consent process at the moment, I'd like to know how, if there's a particular area where consenting resource consent is going through that contentious to our spatial plan, where what is the staff, what are the staff being advised to do?
So through the chair, you currently have a Tairawhiti resource management plan which guides all consenting. You received a report last year and agreed to review the Tairawhiti resource management plan. The team is currently working on the project plan with how we are going to review that, and we're, as part of the implementation plan, the review process will be coming back to council with how we intend to roll that plan review out. So that's the relationship. While this is a strategic document without the plans being reviewed, consenting will still operate under the TRMP as current state.
Continue on that, if there's zoning issues where we're indicating in the future there's going to be different zoning requirements, and so staff would have that in mind when the decisions are made, even though they might be under a different rule because of their current.
Absolutely. So that implementation plan is cognizant of where do we need to rezone as a priority, where do we need to tidy up some rules, and that will be coming back in the next 3 months, I understand.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask you to explain carefully what the process is between the spatial plan and the district plan? Because I think there's some misunderstanding, and that even those intentions can't come into effect until such time as there are proper process, proper hearings. So can we just have that clarified for everyone's benefit?
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was going to go to. Just so the spatial plan, unlike the Auckland unitary plan, ours is a legislative later for. So at the moment it's a non-statutory document unless central government decides to amend legislation. What that means for us is that it's useful in terms of articulating the high aspirations and outcomes that we're trying to achieve going out into 30 years. What it gives us is general kind of guidance as to how we need to then shape up our review of our unitary plan, our combined regional and district plan. It doesn't, so in terms of our planners, when they receive consent supplying the spatial plan objectives to them, they still need to operate off our statutory plan, which is the unitary plan. Kate's team will be bringing back to council the next steps around implementation, and part of that in terms of the review of our unitary plan is our regional policy statement. Because our plan is outdated, as you saw last year, it's not fit for purpose. Some parts are 10 years old, that part of that will be the establishment of a regional policy statement, and that kind of in terms of the hierarchy around planning instruments, that in effect requires your district plan to all align to that as well. So it's probably easy if we do get an illustration around that. But that process then goes through a hearings process. There are objections under the RMA. So that's a 2-year, that's ambitious timeframe for a regional policy statement to be completed.
Thank you for that. Councillor Seymour, you next.
Yes, I just wanted to draw attention.
Microphone.
And because I left my glasses behind, I can't see what the page is, but it relates to our goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. And Trust Tairawhiti made a submission, and they suggest that it be 2030. I'm just a bit concerned that it's being changed automatically on the request of Trust Tairawhiti, because many of the public have had an opportunity to see this, and we've sought submissions.
What page is that?
12.
12.
And I'm just concerned that we've changed that, because that has enormous financial implications for the organisation. And so we've changed it on response to just one submitter. And I'm just not sure what the process around that is. And I'm just seeking justification in effect, because we've all talked about the 2050 goal, and there will be substantial financial implications if we try to bring that forward. And what thought have we put into that, please? It's in this chart process on page 12.
So it is page.
It's the second box on page 12. Page 13.
13 of 192.
No, it's page 12. It's
On the paper copy it is.
digital, it's on something different, right?
And digital.
I did say 13 on the digital.
So principally, what you're asking, Councillor Seymour, is justification for why this was changed on the basis of one submitter. Perhaps Yannick or one of the other staff members that dealt with the submissions may be able to respond to that question.
Just that others have seen it, heard it, and nobody responded. And Trust Tairawhiti is an entity and have made a number of submissions on a number of points, and that's great, and it's easy for them. It's the application of the hand to that decision I'm querying.
Through the chair, so as you know, that we set 2050 as the first goal. The submitter made a fair point that while we don't have statutory direction to achieve that goal sooner, but the science, in fact, actually pointed to the need to achieve that goal sooner than 2050. So we were guided by the science that supported the submission and felt that it was a fair call. Obviously, as we review, we'll take a look at how we go about achieving that goal. That was the basis for amending our goal to 2030.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I had a few points around some of the aspirations in the document. I'll start with one that Andy raised, and it was around the cycle of work and the pointing of 20% being the target. I was wondering if we'd done any sort of investigation into things like what council's currently achieving and how, in terms of quantity of staff that cycle to work, and how we're going to increase that to meet 20% or greater. That's more implementation, but I guess having a base reference for whether that 20% is actually already being achieved or not is worth looking at.
Again, I'm going to defer to Yannick. I do know we've begun initial work in there, but I'll get him to give you the detail.
Through the chair, it's a really good question. What we typically don't monitor a lot of is our walking and cycling component. So it's actually fair to say that we probably don't have the best data. So we are relying on a reasonable paucity of information around how active our communities are. So it was a bit of a stab, to be honest. Our reckoning is we're probably around about 11%, which is actually comparatively high for us compared to other regions. It was a goal that was set, and the intention is that we improve our monitoring. But we are undertaking a business case for active transport at the moment and looking at our cycle routes. And the aspiration is certainly for much higher. And the workshop that we had yesterday suggested that actually we could aim significantly higher than 20%, in fact, doubling our walking and cycling numbers within 10 years. So we will monitor and we'll get better data, and then we will look at actually how high we can aim for.
Great, thank you very much. Denise?
Yes, we can. Councillor Seymour, supplementary question to that.
Just how will you be able to tell whether it's the same cyclist using the cycleway constantly or 25 new cyclists? Because that's what intrigues me about our walkways.
We'd have to rely on a range of different data, so not just one set of data. We employ a range of methods, including Strava, which is one way of collecting information, particularly from cyclists who train on non-routes. But there are a whole range of other ways to collect information. And what we aim to do is to pull that data together to get a better picture.
Councillor Dowden, you can continue.
Thank you. Next exploration, which I found, which I believe is probably unlikely to be achievable, was in outcome 5. We take sustainability seriously.
What
And it
page?
sorry, I'm working from the
Yep.
the mocked up one, so it's 66 on the digital. It's the marked up version. And it was 100% of vehicles are powered by renewable energy. I don't think it's an aspiration that we could possibly achieve to convert the entire region's vehicle fleet to EVs by 2030 or 2050, sorry.
We could.
Within 30 years, our current community could not all buy brand new vehicles. It's
Second-hand Nissan leaves the $9,000.
Yes, the vehicle you own is already existing and more
No, I hear what you're
sustainable than replacing it with an EV. It's not necessarily the best outcome either to dispose of the entire region's vehicle fleet to replace it. So aspirationally, it should be around increasing sensibly or enabling the change to EV. The next point was on diversifying economy, or in a diverse economy, outcome 7. In the opportunities, it speaks to a great deal of doubling down on the economy that we already have. It speaks to supporting more timber processing, more cropping, more of what we have. It doesn't speak to diversifying. There is a one-liner in the aspirations, which is that Gisborne City is one of New Zealand's technology hubs. It's an immeasurable goal. We could say that that's true today. We've attracted some business. So as an aspiration, it's not as aspirational enough. Also, the final aspiration in that section is Tairawhiti is the most diverse and innovative food producer in New Zealand. Well, we could probably argue that we're the most diverse already because we're not a single culture crop kind of region. We don't just go into wine. We don't just go into, it'd be hard to argue that we're not already at that achievement. So what is it that we're trying to achieve there? So just a little bit more diversity in the diversity section is what I'd like to see. And then in the waste section, I didn't feel like we had fleshed out resource recovery well enough, and resource recovery will really be where we can make impacts and changes to our waste profile. Waste reduction is great, that's consumer change, but resource recovery is how we stop generating new waste. And so I think that's important. So just to flesh that out a little bit more. And that's beyond that, I thought the document was really presentable. Thank you very much. It was an easy read, and it gets to the interesting point of each section very neatly. So thank you.
So just for process, as we are making our comments as individual councillors, the CEO are taking notes. And in the end, when we look at adopting this document, we will come back, circle back to what was mentioned and just get a feel around the table, yay or nay, when we agree on amendments or not. So we are taking notes and we will circle back to that. Councillor Robinson, you are next.
First, I want to acknowledge the work of the staff. This is a really, really great piece of work that a lot of effort has gone into, and so well done. For me, the focus on this document really is around energy. It's my personal focus, and if you check the word energy in the doc, it comes up about 60 times. But what it really highlights to me is when you look at the fractionalized nature of the references to energy, we definitely need an energy strategy for Tairawhiti. Without an energy strategy, which will encompass a significant piece of work, understanding our region's energy capacity, our energy needs, our future energy needs, we're actually not going to be able to have, I don't believe, an ability to tie it all together. I know other councils have dedicated energy strategies and have done significant work identifying the energy in their regions, and I really believe that something we need to do now, coming out of today, is I don't know how the process works, but we absolutely need to get the ball rolling on developing our energy strategy. We had one a few years ago. It wasn't a particularly complicated or diverse document, but that's gone by the by now, and we do need an energy strategy, in my view, for Tairawhiti. And that's going to need us to link with all the stakeholders to really get understanding and get our heads around what energy, because that's going to be the biggest stumbling block, I think, for Tairawhiti in the next 30 years. My personal view in relation to the aspirational comment about 100% of EVs being, or electric vehicles, the discussion just before talked about people owning them. That works on a model of individual ownership. It could be collective ownership. It could be Trust Tairawhiti might own a fleet of 5,000 EVs. The vehicle to grid technology, V2G technology, which is now standard in all EVs from this year, allows a network provider to tap into an electric vehicle to draw the power back to flatten out the highs and lows during power needs. That sort of technology will be a game changer, and if Tairawhiti is onto it, we could actually be a real leader with our network in Trust Tairawhiti, using EVs as a way to manage the renewable energy generated in Tairawhiti. And I actually think there's a massive opportunity for us to be a real game breaker and leader in this environment. So yeah, absolutely. I think an aspiration of 100% ownership of electric EVs or 100% EVs is doable in 30 years' time. I would like that to remain in the document. But that's my main corridor on this.
Thank you. Any other councillors that would like to have a question? Councillor Akuata Brown.
Kia ora everybody, sorry I was late. I just, in regards to page 69, 70, in line with Māori aspirations, one of the things I've noticed in our rhetoric often is the targeted space of things Māori, but I just want people to know that what's good for Māori is good for everybody. So when we're working on resilience and targeting space, attending the summit, I don't even know, was it a week or two ago now, it was really clear that there's a whole lot of work being done around Te Ao Māori I'm not going to say constructs, yes, and maramataka and that framework. But I know that for many of us even, we have to understand what those mean as individuals. And so I'm really heartened that this council has got a strong stand in regards to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and that framework moving forward. So I was just wondering, when we talk about aspirations, what are we actually able to do in this space? Well, what are we doing well? I know we have a couple of, we have the JMA, Rongo Whakaata Iwi Trust and other iwi local are now more involved in helping put their aspirations on the table as well. But in an actual aspirational space, we know that still freehold Māori land, the rate space, all of those things. So in the actuals of accomplishing some of these key aspirations for Māori, I was heartened to hear other councils do have dedicated staff in the maramataka and mātauranga Māori sections of their councils. I know we've come a long way. So just actuals, what we can actually attainably get to in this space versus those aspirations. And just because there's a lot of extra knowledge, you know, that we need to understand too from local iwi, hapu and whānau about our region. So is that dynamic happening? Is there more of that availability to staff and us as a council moving forward, just in that space?
Let's go here.
Through the chair, so again, this is aspirational. The implementation plan, how we hope to deliver on some of these aspirations will be coming in the next coming months. And obviously there's an LTP year, so how council choose to resource some of that. This document really reflects some of the submission points around wanting increased led by Māori, led by hapu type of aspirations. So how council can support that, much like other stakeholders where community-led, people want to be led by their own selves and supported by council. How we do that will show through the implementation plan. There's some key comments in the submissions around aspirations for representation at council, wards and the like, but obviously that's a decision later down the track, but these are really supporting some of the aspirations of Māori, and also we've got some statutory levers within which we're required to do so. How we do that, implementation plan is key. This is really agreeing to the aspiration that we're supportive of those submissions received and contained within.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying, because what I've noticed over the years is that a systemic space will take on a Māori framework or name, like haura. And what does it actually mean? What does it look like when you're out working it? But I think it sits alongside our celebrating our heritage. And I'd like to see us, when we talk of our heritage, dual cultural type spaces, it be less divisive and more inclusive moving forward, because we've had tuia. We know that there are those who strongly fit in this space and that, but coming together more strong is about hearing our community's aspirations around how our dual cultures, you know, actually are working together more. I think that will create more of a pleasant space, I guess, of talks, rather than it always being seen as like Waitangi Day, such. So yeah, so thanks for that, and I look forward to the implementation plan.
Thank you. I'm just going to be Councillor Warsnop for a minute and read the comments that you emailed to me. And this is in regards to the spatial plan. My only comment would be that while I did feel that the draft initially ended a bit too suddenly and it wasn't wrapped up, so to speak, perhaps we require a graphic illustration at the end of how everything fits together. I'm not sure that the model used on the last page achieved this. I found it hard to decipher how each component related to the others in the diagram. So would drop it given that option. Obviously, it's not a critical point, but maybe something to make it easier to read. So that's just feedback from Councillor Warsnop. I just want to ask, so if anyone still wants to ask a question, then I'm going to give Councillor Seymour another chance.
We won't be here worrying about spatial plan. I don't care what industry it is, but can we please have something that indicates an industry? We've got heaps of people and lovely landscapes, but
some work.
Town and district won't function. We still retain sustainable industries. And here's a huge impact on the environment. I think we need to look at that when we looking at implementation. We had to put quite a bit of feedback about that at Fleet, but that relates to page 21.
Thank you. Thanks for that. So I think what we're going to do now is just give the microphone to the CEO, who will take us through these issues that were raised. And all I ask at this stage, we've got a document. Some individual councillors raised some issues. So what we now just need to decide relatively informally is, yes, do we go with that recommendation, or do we want to stick with what's in the document? So it's going to be a relatively informal process. And then once we finish there, I'll put it, the recommendation to us. So Nadine, are you going to take charge?
For your worship, I'll give it a go. So there might need to be a bit more dialogue on some of the points here, just to get clarification around what the direction is of council. So the first one is just checking in, do you want to increase the current target we've got for walking and cycling. So I heard that.
You raised that.
And therefore, what might that be, given that we've kind of done 20%? What might be a realistic? So there was one on, I'll come to the children one, because I thought they were quite separate targets.
So just take us to the page. Can you remember what page it was? 90. Aspirations by 2050. The fifth bullet point.
So 40%?
Yep. I'm quite comfortable with that. It's an aspiration which we want to achieve, so let's aim high. Great, so we change that to 40. Yes. Yeah. Good. Okay, next one. Let's just stay focused, everyone. I know it's a lot of fun. Next. Yeah. Yeah.
So a target of 80% children walking or cycling to school?
Yes, we've already got 2 Stoltz brothers. Right, next we move on. Move on.
Okay, so we need to amend the target of 100% vehicles powered by renewable energy.
I'm happy to stay with 100%. To me, it's an aspirational. This whole document is aspirational.
Yeah,
It's not
the actual,
sustainable, I think.
the reasoning behind it isn't just the difficulty in achieving it, but it's also that it's not the most sustainable thing to do to dispose of the entire region's vehicle fleet and replace it. It's actually going to have a much worse impact on climate change to just dump all of the vehicles that currently exist to replace them with high mineral use EVs, because the batteries what it takes to build one is not.
But isn't this aspiration saying for those of us that do decide to use a vehicle, we're still not saying let's replace all the vehicles on this road. Some families are now 1 vehicle families. What I read is that the vehicles that will be on the road will be electric vehicles. We still want people to hop out of vehicles and do active transport. So how I saw it was the vehicles that will be on the road in 2050 will be electric vehicles. That's how I saw it.
But that's 100% of vehicles.
That will be.
So that's all of your trucks, all of your personal vehicles, so none of my vehicles will exist anymore. None of it. I ride a 50-year-old scooter. That would be out of,
But don't you think over 30 years, the vehicle that you're driving now would anyway be phased? If you still drive that in 50 years, come and see me. Any other comments or ideas around that? Councillor Faulkner.
I think Councillor Dowsing's got a very good point in that it's very easy to speak of our personal transport that takes us from A to B, or the children to school. They should be on bikes, they should be walking, etc. There is a point where you have to acknowledge that business and industry currently runs on fossil fuels. We all readily agree that technology is moving at such a speed in this space, but we don't know what that looks like. So possibly 100% is aspirational, absolutely. It may not be realistic. So where you find the middle ground between aspiration and reality is probably where this conversation is. So is it possible to word it in such a way that, given the technology, our aspiration is 100% renewable transport energy?
I hear what you're saying.
So it becomes technology, you invite technology in to the conversation.
Councillor Robinson.
Most of the large European car manufacturers by law will no longer produce combustion engine cars and vehicles in Europe from either 2025 or 2030. I can't remember which it is. Okay, so let's be smart. In 30 years' time, you will not see combustion engine cars being on the new lots. They will be EVs or possibly hydrogen cars. This is an excellent aspirational goal, and I think we'd be bereft as a council to water it down below 100%.
Councillor Faulkner, you answer or talk about that, and then Councillor Seymour.
Sorry, my only comment is it's about inviting the technology. Because currently the technology is very heavy-handed. The current EV technology is very heavy-handed on certain parts of the environment in our globe. Yeah, we are part of a global community here. And if we're going to go down a, you know, if we're going to push for something that is damaging other parts of our planet, you know, that's not ideal either. My argument is allow the technology to get us to 100%. It's not against 100%. It's encourage the technology.
Councillor Seymour and then Councillor Wharehinga.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm where Councillor Dowling is. I'm concerned about the removal of 100% of our vehicle fleet to where, and I mean, we know how difficult it is to export metal products to other parts of the world now. So are we going to see stockpiles of dead cars? We have enough dead cars, actually. So I hear entirely the terminology that Councillor Faulkner suggested, and I'd be supportive of that, but that doesn't give us a target. So I'm not happy with 100%.
Yep. Councillor Wharehinga.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to speak up in support of Councillor Faulkner's idea in regards to including technology. And I think that we should actually be aiming for 100% because the actual statement is 100% renewable energy. That doesn't specifically mean EV. And having a statement in regards to technology means that we can look at other things that may be coming on. We could look at the trends in Europe. We could look at, like Councillor Robinson had said, you know, by that time hydrogen could possibly be a thing or something. We don't know what's going to be coming in 30 years' time. And I think that it actually does allow us to look broader like that if we do make that statement. If we don't, we'll be more narrowed in our look, and I don't think that narrowing our look is the best thing for our region. So I am in support of keeping the target at 100%, but I'm also in support of the addition in regards to really focusing what we're going to be looking at, how we're going to be looking at.
So what I'm picking up is that we all have this aspirational goal, but it's how we word it in our spatial plan to accommodate what everyone. So staff, do you have a recommendation of words you've been scribbling here next to us?
Yeah, it's like that requires quiet thinking time. So I was potentially, just wanted to check in on this 100% thing. We could look at, we've transitioned to vehicles powered by renewable energy in a sustainable way, but it drops out that 100%. So if you want the 100%, and I need to rethink that wording.
But then there's no aspiration.
Yeah, this is the vote. I would be happy with it being 100%. I would be happy with it being 100% if it had something to the tune of support the transition to renewable energy powered vehicles with an aspirational goal of 100% where technology allows. So, because when we talk about biodiesel and things like that, obviously there's other alternatives to renewable sources, like Councillor Wharehinga says. It's not just EV, but and hydrogen powered vehicles are coming along well. But it needs to be clear that we want to get there, but don't know if technology will allow it. Essentially.
Councillor Burdett. Just your microphone, please.
Operational document, but there needs, as Sandra has said, there needs to be a level of realism in it. 30 years out, none of us know, and I agree with everything you've said.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's focus on this one and finish this one off.
I feel in terms of the transitioning component, because if you're thinking over that 30 years time frame, not just automatically getting the community to go out and buy a new EV powered vehicle or whatever that looks like, that there is that component around when you, as you've talked about, disposing of your vehicle. So there is that sustainable management component in there that needs to somehow be captured, whether that is through digital technology that improves that, or whether it's renewable sources of material from your old waste. So I think that kind of needs to be in there. I'm a bit reluctant in terms of the wording around supporting a goal, because the aspirations are the aspirations, that's the goal. So underneath it needs to be quite specific around what that is. But if we include, we could leave in 100% of vehicles are powered by renewable energy, and the community is supported to transition in a sustainable way. That kind of covers both
That's whom
Should cover.
Would not find it you.
encouraged, not
Well,
supported.
we could support it without paying, we could support it by having a unpaid
Charging
facility,
stations.
which, makes it more consumer friendly, having been.
So these incentivise without money. Okay, so read those words again and then see if we've got agreement that that is more aligned with the way we are all thinking.
100% of vehicles are powered by renewable energy, and the community is, question mark around, also to transition in a sustainable way.
I like that. Everyone happy with that wording?
So just checking in around, the council is not responsible for delivering on all the aspirations. They're the aspirations of the community, and that we will be working with partners, like some of the other outcomes the aspirations that have been identified in here. We can't deliver everything.
These are community aspirations, not only council. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. I think there was overall agreement. Anyone else that want to change, tweak the words? Pat, I heard that you said you were not 100% happy. Good, that's all right. Okay, move on to our next point.
So outcome 7, page 96 of 192 of the agenda. Strengthen more diversity and diversity. So the whole section talked about a diverse economy, but then reference was made to our primary productive sectors, which probably already, so it wasn't very aspirational in that sense. So probably just some suggestions here as to what we could, we could water down.
I think also with regard to diversity, we have to start to look at our populations, diverse groups now that bring with them economic opportunities, I guess, as well as business-minded. When I look around my region now, there's a whole host of other cultures running key businesses and wanting to grow those businesses. So in the diversify or being a diverse economy, we probably need to really be assured that we understand the diverse cultures moving into region with economic aspirations. Of course, growing up here, we never had sushi. Now we've got, these other cultures moving in that are bringing with them food industries. I'm sure there'll be those with technological adages as well. So understanding a diverse economy, I think we need to ensure in our papers, in our research, and is understanding who's living here now in those diverse spaces.
Thank you. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. My point on diversity and the way to broaden this wouldn't be around what we're already doing or the way we're diversifying within our industry, because as I've mentioned, we're already quite diverse in how we produce here and what we do. It's about attracting more vertical markets. It's about attracting business types that we don't currently have in region. We are very primary industries focused here. How do we, and it's not just technology. Technology is the only one highlighted here, but we don't have a great deal of professional services. We don't have, what can we do to diversify the work that is being done in our central business district? What can we do to diversify the activities that central government's supporting around the country? What can we, how do we attract new types of business? And it's enabling the attraction of different vertical markets to region, essentially it.
Following on from Councillor Dowsing's speak just now, because we know our region has had for a long time, in my personal view, a number of social services. That sector has always been quite large in our region. So I would love to see us aspire to, I guess not without meeting the needs of those in need, but having less sector grow that not grow so much. There's also a certain retail outlets in our region. You know, we don't want to become a region that's known for 15 shops that sell landfill issues, etc. So, like, you know, those types of things, making sure our economy is growing. I know there are people who do space, but there will be some bonuses and inspiration around the region, not only the social services.
You've got the wording for that one?
No.
No.
No, so can I just refer you in terms of the aspirations? So the aspirations are that around the diverse economy, good balance of industry sectors, transitioning away, small businesses get big here, etc., etc. Are those aspirations the ones that need to be amended, or is it the commentary around the opportunities there that are heavily weighted towards primary productive sector, not necessarily trying to cut net wider? So if we added in there,
if we make the consideration that Tairawhiti is exposed to climate change across the majority of our industry and region, and so we could be affected by a climate event that severely hampers the production of our region, right? What can we do to protect against that? How do you do it? You introduce new industry, different industry that's not reliant on not vulnerable. So how are we supporting that in our opportunities, and where are we representing that in our actions? And that's the piece that I feel is missing from diversification in there. And I don't think we need to wordsmith it today. We just need to acknowledge that there'll be a piece going in that can fit that.
Okay, next one.
Waste. So let's flesh out the resource recovery component in the waste section.
Who raised that issue? Shannon. Can you remember what page?
I had it.
There it is, page 102 of 192, waste management. Challenge one.
Challenge, is it in the
Challenge
challenges,
one.
or was it in the?
102 of 192. There it is.
I believe the statement that Councillor Dowsbury made was in regards to
It was simply that resource recovery is our provides the largest opportunity to actually reduce what waste goes to landfill, and how we can how we can generate a circular economy aspect to our region. So I felt that needed more emphasis on resource recovery leading to the outcome of being a circular economy in region. And yeah, essentially it being the biggest part of our waste minimisation as well.
Resources.
Yeah. I think there was a mention of circular economy in the aspirations, is that right?
There is. Tony, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just by way of clarification then, how does that statement in that area on waste recovery flow into actual policy or an action? Because we've had lots of corridors since we started in this job with the potential for taking out the greenways and having a biogeneration system. So from today, where do we go forth to actually get that rolling?
Yeah, so that flows through to your waste minimisation plan. Then, so there's some funding that's attached to that and the initiatives that council implements. It also flows through, and it's aligned with the refresh of the Tairawhiti Economic Action Plan, which is now available on Trust Tairawhiti's website. So there are some initiatives underway that directly link up. So it's just really reinforcing where the community is kind of heading.
But as to, for example, we collect the waste from households.
Yep.
How do we implement or start thinking about looking at, for example, dual bins where we collect the green waste and we take that out? And I mean, have we started a think tank on this, or is it some nebulous idea that's floating around in some other entity, or are we owning it and driving it? And what's our program for that?
Yeah, so that is on the program, the whole transition to wheelie bins, whatever that might look like. That's part of the waste minimisation plan, and that's on council's work program to deliver. I think
So
it's
that's
this year, actually.
2018 to 2024 is our current plan. So in there, you can take a look at where we are at. And I think in this coming year is our talking about wheelie bins. So there's work programs set out there, but take a look at the current one, and then we will renew it next time come around, and then 2024 or before that, we will be, there's a plan up to 2024, I think, yeah.
So can I, sorry, through your worship, can I just check back in around, so the resource recovery component and the challenge under community resilience and sustainability, we will add in a paragraph that emphasises that resource recovery provides one of the greater opportunities to achieve that.
Right. Next one. How many do we have left? 3?
So there was a question around energy strategy and where that is, and we will connect into that through the implementation plan. That is something that I need to check in with Trust Tairawhiti around whether they had that on their work program, but definitely something that should be in the implementation component.
Thank you. Next one.
Agree with Councillor Snob in terms of better illustration to tie everything at the end, so we'll get working on that. And then the last one was a picture of a sustainable industry in there.
Right. Any other comments? Councillor Seymour.
And Chair, you lost mine. The one around 2030, while I listened and accept the explanation that Jana gave us, but that's only 10 years ago.
It's about carbon neutrality.
Yes, it relates to the Trust Tairawhiti, and I can now read it. You'll be pleased about that. The community resilience and sustainability, it's challenge 1, and it was Trust Tairawhiti's recommendation that we amended our 2050 target to 2030. Now, I'm absolutely happy about us aiming to be carbon zero, to have a zero emissions economy by 2050. But seriously, do we honestly think that this organisation is going to have a zero emissions economy by 2030? We're kidding ourselves if we're putting that. That's 10 years away, and we've been talking about half this stuff for 10 years now. Exactly like Councillor Robertson mentioned before about energy. I mean, we talk and talk and talk, so let's make sure this is 3 parts reasonable, because otherwise other people will laugh at us.
You want to respond?
It's actually a submission.
I didn't realise, sorry, through your worship, I didn't realise that that was a request to amend that. Jana was explaining.
Yep.
So, I mean,
how realistic is it to try to achieve that in 10 years?
At what page?
13. It's an aspirational goal.
Yeah, it is, but I mean, it's not even seriously aspirational.
Ultimately, I think it's up to the council whether they want to listen to what was provided through feedback through consultation round, or what was found through science, whether you want to take a leadership role in here, or whether we go with what all other councils are doing, which is a 2050.
Well, that's fine.
So I'm
page 20 of 192 electronically, and it's the second box.
Challenge 2.
Challenge 2. And it's, I mean, if we really want to change it, I mean, I'd be happier with it if it was 2040, but seriously, in 10 years' time, to say that we're having a just transition to a zero emission economy, that's what it says. And the script out to the right says that we will change the document to refer to that, albeit I notice that 2050 is still referred to. It's just in this box, challenge 2. And we still refer to 2050 in other parts of the document. It's just, you know, that it is only 10 years away. That's what gets me. But I don't think we can possibly achieve that.
Councillor Dowsing, you can. Yep.
Thank you. Can I ask the Chief Executive, through the Chair, in terms of our organisation, how soon do we believe, with suitable pressure from the Council to achieve it, how soon do we believe we could be carbon zero?
So through your worship, we are currently undertaking a review of all our emissions to get a sense around what we would need to put in place in order to achieve carbon zero. So I can't say at this stage, hazard a guess. I mean, it really depends on how fast and how much investment the council is willing to put into this and how critical they see it, you see it as an issue. But can I just come back to that point around amendment? So we have not said that we would be carbon neutral by 2030. What we have got are our aspirations by 2050. What Councillor Seymour you're referring to is the comments on that the submitters have made. So that is not in the document. The aspiration is still 2050, we are carbon neutral region.
Sorry, it does say right there, Chair, if we're to read the script, it says officers comment except, and so that's what made me think. If we're writing, because there's some of the things we say reject, where people make a comment, so the one above has been rejected. That one has been accepted, which would lead me to believe that we were going to change the document. That's all I'm arguing about.
Sure, so there's no further, apart from what has been described to us or agreed around the table, there's no further amendments to the document. I might point out, however, we do say that we have an opportunity here to become carbon neutral before the national 2050 target. So whilst it doesn't say 2030, there is an opportunity in there for us. So just, yeah, so there will be no further changes post the what's agreed around the table.
Okay, last comments. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. To the CE, through you, Madam Chair. So we are doing this review and analysis of council's carbon footprint at the moment. What's the time frame for getting that information, please?
Yannick, can you comment on the time frame? Hannah?
Through the chair, we're just focusing on the regional footprint at the moment, which is due hopefully in March, and then after that we'll be focusing a little bit more. We've gathered some of the data, but not all of it. So definitely by mid-year, I would hope.
Thank you. June. Councillor Wharehenga.
Just one other comment was in regards to the illustration around the drop down, the point that Councillor Seymour had made in regards to how the spatial plan informs the district plan and those individual policies and things like that. So just to bring that back, just as a reminder.
Yeah. Councillor Faulkner.
I've just made a small suggestion around some wordsmithing on the EV, 100% EV suggestion, which I think we all support.
Good.
But it was just getting the word.
Good. I do think we've given it a good thrashing today. Thank you so much for all your input. This is the aspirational framework for us as a new council going forward as we move into our 10-year plan next year, which we will have this framework, which we will then look towards to see where it guides us when we set down finances and plans for our next 10-year plan. So Keita, Nadine, you and your team, thank you so much. When I looked through this and saw that we started in November 2018, and I remember quite a few of these workshops, there were people like Terry, Sandra and Kerry who were in other positions then for the chamber and fed farmers who attended on their behalf. So thank you so much to staff. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much to our community for coming, talking to us, telling us what's important to them. And most important, Yannick, Joe, you guys in the back, you are the stars. You have travelled up and down the coast. You have been to the west. You have met with iwi, hapu. You've met with grumpy councillors. You have met with community members who wanted to amend some stuff. You listened patiently. Thank you so much for the hours and hours you've put into this. I'm proud that this is our first spatial plan. I'm sure we'll learn a lot as we take a look at how we implement this, because if it's only words on paper, it means nothing. It's all about how we're going to implement this on behalf of our community. So I would like to move that we adopt this spatial plan with some of the minor amendments. I've got a seconder there, and Councillor Wharehenga, all in favour? Contrary, carried. Well done, everyone. Let's have a cup of tea. let's go, friends. Now we're going to go to an item it's been in front of the Regional Transport Committee before. And as I've indicated when we formed our committees, is that by statute, 4 councillors and 4 NZTA staff are on these committees. But I do want us as a council to make sure every one of us read these reports and feed back to our colleagues who would then vote on our behalf at these committees. So we haven't set up that structure yet, and we will in the next few months see how we can maybe, before a transport meeting, get input from other councillors. But what Councillor Seymour has recommended, and I support that, is that we take a good look today on page 133, our heavy vehicle freight routes, and then Councillor Seymour will make some comments later that we adopt this and go forward. So I'm going to open up the report for anyone to discuss now. And Sally who's doing, okay? Yeah, okay. So do you want to give us a quick overview and then we'll open up the floor for councillors?
Kia ora anō. So further to the request of the chair of the RTC, that we bring this paper and options just for visibility. So it's a noting report to give you visibility of proposed routes. Our team is working through next stages, what consultation looks like. We've got some heavy interest with industry and of course the port in this document, and we'll be coming back with how we propose to engage with them, but it's merely for information, and rightly so, so that there's visibility.
Just before we open it up for discussion, Councillor Seymour, you go first. So Councillor Seymour, as the chair, would give us a little bit of what they've done with it up to now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it was at the first Regional Transport Committee meeting of the year. And just to reiterate what the Mayor's just shared with you, there are only 4 councillors on that, and there were only 3 present that day. It seemed unfair and unreasonable for the whole of council if we didn't bring this back here. But it is important that we keep the process moving, because we've been talking about a heavy transport review for heaven only knows how long. And so I've just checked out with the Mayor and the Chief Executive, and the recommendation should be that we adopt the recommendations in this report for consultation, not just note them, or otherwise we're still pussyfooting around, and not actually making clear to the world and to our Gisborne residents and to our freight users and other industry and to the residents on the roads. Just exactly what we're looking at. So you'll see through the document some recommendations made by WSP, I think they call themselves now,
yes,
formerly Opus, and they particularly are on page 145 of 192, the particular connecting links. And this conversation has gone on for Gisborne District Council for years, and particularly the issue of Harini Street bypass. I mean, several people, both on council and those interested, but before they were on council, will remember quite substantial discussions that we had about a significant roundabout on Harini and Wainui Road, and we ended up subsequently, because there it becomes part of a state highway, we ended up with the road being blocked off and no roundabout whatsoever and simply one turn. So I just think if council adopts this paper, if you're generally happy with it, that we adopt it, but we then go out to consultation, because we're actually saying we believe in some parts of it. Otherwise, if we just note it, we're not believing in any parts of it. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would be happy to move that we adopt the recommendations of the WSP report for consultation.
So we've got a mover in Councillor Seymour, and Councillor Badette seconded that. Councillor Dowsing, you are next.
Thank you. Yes, I followed this as it came through the committee. Was fortunately my week to write for the paper, so I had to go over it. And there is a lot of sensible suggestions in this document. And for those who didn't look at it earlier and have had the opportunity now, I think you'll see that it makes a lot of sense. But there is, but the reasonable thing to do from this stage is go to the community and find out if there's areas that have been missed and take those suggestions. So I'm more than happy to support Councillor Seymour's bringing it to the council, which was which is well received, and then also the suggestion to take it to consultation. Cheers.
Thank you. Next, we've got Councillor Wharehinga and then Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I absolutely do support Councillor Seymour's recommendation, and I do really like this. Paper. It's essential that we go out to our community and have conversations with them. One thing that I think that we do need to stay cognizant of as well is footpath availability out at Makaraka. Looking at the map, there's that transition through Makaraka, and I read through the document, and it's not there. And I understand that this is for initial consultation, but I know that would be one of the really urgent things for our community that live out at Makaraka.
Thank you for that, Councillor Foster, and then Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, this has been a conversation happening for a long, long time, and our residents are really keen to see some action happening on this. So yeah, I read through this, and I did actually read it at the Transport Committee meeting anyway. So I totally applaud where we're going with this, the direction that it's taking, utilising the state highways, government money. And so, yeah, I'd be wanting to see this implemented out to public consultation and get the ball moving on it as fast as possible. I think there will be great support.
Councillor Dunn and then Councillor Akuata-Brown.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councillor Seymour. However, in this report, there is no clear recommendations. There isn't a section that says these are the recommendations of the report. They kind of just go through it. So I think we might actually have to specify exactly what in the report we refer to as the recommendations.
So they are preferred options.
So we're referring to the summary, or we're referring to...
So through your worship, if you refer to page 145 of 192 of the agenda, it outlines the options and assessment, and then underneath each of those options has a recommended option. So, for example, for the connecting link option, option C, L1B
Via Harper Road
is the recommended option. So those would be the ones that you would be adopting us for consultation instead.
So the ones that provide the best balance are the recommendations. Okay.
Okay, we move on to Councillor Akuata-Brown.
Thank you, and again, thank you to staff and all that have been on this journey. Navigating our roading system isn't easy regarding costs and the effectiveness of it all. So it's been a long time coming, but we have significant interest in this space throughout our region. Of course, we've had many people come and make submissions in regards to how do we do this safely, etc. So I guess my couple of things was a note on page 34, they talk about the priorities from an economic and a social, but I know in the framework of how they've come up the matrix wise, it's good to see there's the cultural aspects as well as emotional, mental. You know, our region has been significantly changed and challenged because of the heavy use of the network. And I'm just aware that it's an election year and the government is looking to spend more money, of course, in Auckland on highways up there. But I wanted to ask, is there any more funding through the PGF framework that is going to help in this space of a heavy bypass, or is that something new project-wise?
Through your worship, we would have to wait and see what comes out, what shakes out this year. Nothing I can comment on at this stage.
So we've got Councillor Burdett and then Councillor Robertson.
This paper is time for us. Don't have to get it on the paper. The reason I expect to back up the consultation is we were invited to the transport meeting. This was part of the outcome, but we spent a full day there listening to all the high bugs from Transport Agency, and we were better informed on that day than we have been for most of the last 3 years, the regional land transport meetings. The issue I would like to be put in front of us too, with the concurrence of the chair and the mayor, is the critiquing of that meeting so that people get a full understanding. We would actually part of a delivery in terms of the criteria for the Provincial Growth Fund and the National Transport Agency criteria. And it's a huge difference. You can understand why when the stuff goes to Wellington, we get turned down all the time. So the Provincial Growth Fund is the place to go at this point in time. Anyway, I think in terms of the regional land transport, this is very timely, and I think the critiquing of that meeting should come to the meeting too, regional land transport.
Thank you for that. Councillor Robinson.
It's been raised with me by members of the public around the noise of engine braking from trucks, particularly around the port at all hours as they are now, within the city limits, and the question of can there be a by-law to prevent that? Is this consultation document a vehicle for putting that out there, and if so, can it be tagged in somewhere? Because they're running literally 24/7 to the port, and the noise carries quite significantly, apparently.
Yes. So through your worship, currently our current traffic and parking bylaw doesn't exclude vehicle road areas that we would restrict heavy vehicle movements on. This identifies some options to enable us to restrict them. For example, the question around whether they could use Crawford Road. This is the option here is saying you cannot, you'd use Hidden Street. So this bit here would feed into the bylaw that would then go out for consultation, or amended bylaw that would go out for consultation. Similarly, if there are other concerns around engine braking, we would include that in the amended bylaw for consultation.
It was mentioned in here. There it is, number 10. The traffic and parking bylaw is a mechanism to introduce formal regulations. It is scheduled for review in 2020.
No, it hasn't been created.
Not being created. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to give Councillor Dunn another go. Thank you.
Just back to my comment regarding recommendations on page 145. There's 3 recommendations there. Are we actually going out with the route option? So we actually there's one recommendation in this report, which is the highway route. Is that correct? Because we've looked at the connecting link options, and then we've come up with the route option.
No, sorry, through your worship, there's 3 options here. So 3 different routes that could be available to the to heavy vehicles, and so we would be going out consulting on the preferred options that were identified in the report. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so we're not actually saying that the highway route is what we're recommending.
So that's
Which
the
is the-
third. That's the
That's the
third.
third. So we're going to go out to the community talking about the connecting link options, the port access options, and with that, we'll say what the preferred one is, and route options and assessment. So there are 3 different.
Essentially, is not the highway route the combination of the 2 previous recommendations? Yeah, they are.
Well,
The dual route.
Yeah.
and it's a network of, it's the ultimate network. However, it could be amended depending on what the feedback came back in terms of recommendation option 1, for example, for Harper Road being the preferred.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand what the actual recommendations are that we are moving here with Councillor Seymour. And my understanding is that the highway route is a combination of CL1B and PA1A, which are the 2 previous recommendations. So are we going out, are we saying from today that our recommendation is to support the highway route? What actually are we agreeing to today? Because
You want to know what we're going to take to the public and say, these are the options, these are the recommendations. So you want to know clarity, what are the options we're laying out for the public when we consult?
yeah, when I read this report, I'm seeing that the CL1B
Yes.
and the PA1A
Yes.
have been combined to create the highway route.
Sorry, I'll clarify that.
Well, thank you, but we've
Sorry.
got staff that can clarify that.
Am I reading it correctly in that we've combined those 2 to create the optimal route option, which is the highway route? Or am I reading the report wrong? That's what I'm trying to understand.
I don't have the report in front of me, sorry. through the chair.
Councillor Dowsing.
But,
Sorry.
um,
So the PA1A
Yes.
is the route from the coast road into the port.
Yes.
The other, you mentioned, the other number is the,
Up 1B.
yeah, CL1B, is the route onto Awapuni Road. So they are two independent. The highway route refers to the entirety of the road from the west coming into region, whereas the PA1A, I think it was, is strictly the coast to port. So they are two separate things, and as optioneering, they are components. The highway route would refer to any route using the state highway from the west. No.
Yes.
Through the chair. So transport obviously is a network of connections. What we're proposing here is how that network will work together and what we want to engage with the community. So page 148 identifies in a visual sense those options that are discussed previously that you're seeking clarification on, Councillor Dunn. So that map in essence is what we're consulting on. We're seeking feedback on those three options. So there's the highway route, which is the blue line, options for connecting, the link down back Ormond. And so we're seeking feedback on the connection of this framework and how well that works for community, industry and the port and like. We will obviously come back with how that consultation strategy, how we're going to approach that with members of the community. But essentially that's what you're adopting here today, that those are options we want to discuss with our community, the feedback and with how we move these heavy vehicles around our city basically follows that framework on page 148.
Okay. So next we've got Councillor Faulkner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my only comment would be in the additional considerations and route improvements. I follow up completely what Councillor Wharehinga spoke about. Well, basically the active transport that we're looking to encourage around our region. Now, heavy traffic being as it is, it's in direct conflict with a lot of the aspirations that we've just been talking about in our spatial plan. So there's obvious improvements that would be needed, particularly through the likes of Harper Road, where you've got a large agricultural cropping network in that space. So you've got a lot of tractors and agricultural machinery on those roads. So are you going to get trucks snailed up behind those implements moving? That's probably one of my first things. But the other thing is, the likes of drainage through a lot of those flats. We've got water issues already. And then the pedestrian accesses between, through some of those small areas, there's a number of schools involved. We're talking about having our children cycle and walk to school. I just would like to see those in those considerations. I'd like to see them noted, if we could, please. Yes, I know then. I see they're noted within the report, but just within that, those bullet points of considerations, I'd like to see them highlighted. Both the movement of agricultural machinery and pedestrian and safe active transport routes. Thank you.
So I have a question which Councillor Warsnop is nearly the same. I'll read hers soon. I can't remember where I saw it, if it was in the paper or in one of these papers, that we spoke about encouraging residential development around Awapuni. So if we are saying we want to encourage residential development around Awapuni, it is not the best option then to try and push all the traffic with a heavy route down there. So I do think those are two conflicting ideas which we just need to think about when we make recommendations, because we can't on one hand say we want to have more residential development down one road, but we're also going to push the heavy vehicles down that road. And please correct me if I'm wrong, or if I dreamt it. I can't remember where I read it, but it is somewhere that I read it.
It was a Gisborne Herald poll.
There we go, there I read it.
Yeah, so I think that part of that spatial plan was the whole idea of trying to move that industrial area out, which will take quite a long a very long time for that to achieve realistically. I think in the meantime, what this points out in the report is that while the council, while we are restricted in how we can limit heavy vehicles, ultimately the costs are borne by the local ratepayer in terms of maintaining that road if you continue to push them down Ormond Road. So either you provide for what might be in the future in terms of our aspirations, or you provide for the current in terms of what we're currently facing around vehicle volumes and the current residents that are impacted by the number of residents, schools, hospitals, volumes coming through.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to go with Councillor Cranston, who hasn't had a turn, then we can do Robinson and Dowsing again.
Yeah, just looking at the map on page 148, I'm a little bit in catch up here, but originally there was discussion about Bushmere Road. If you have a look at the map, you see that big triangle there where it comes down to Makaraka and then back out to the Jolly. I think it's a bit hard to see, the map's a bit small. But has Bushmere been taken out a bit from the practicality of doing everything on the highway, or what's the, because I mean, I can imagine that if that route was picked, that people would still use Bushmere because it's a more straight line.
Through the chair, Bushmere, as far as I recall, was removed before this WSP report. It was considered in the earlier reports in the network operating framework, but it was considered because it was again using local roads instead of a highway option. It was taken off from when we asked WSP to look at the brief to look at use a multi-criterion assessment for these options.
So if we did go with this, what's to stop them using Bushmere? It will be a bylaw or something.
Yeah.
So next we've got Councillor Robinson, then Dowsing, then Akuhata Brown.
Due to technical difficulties, which I couldn't access my agenda, which have been resolved now, I'm catching up on this. And actually, I have to say, I can understand Councillor Dunn's confusion around the recommendation 145. I actually can't reconcile this in my head reading this and going back and reading the definitions on page 144. So all I would ask is that before we put this out public consultation, can we please put a lens over this to make sure that this is absolutely clear? Because frankly, sitting here reading it and rereading it, it isn't clear. I can't work out, and I can't reconcile as Councillor Dowsing talked about, a north focus route with the plan on page 148, which clearly is all coming from the west. And I can't work out how Hirini Street would get into the mix unless it was coming down Ormond Road. So, so we get the best feedback from the public, can we please ensure that this report absolutely clearly sets out? Thank you.
Councillor Dowsing and then Akuhata Brown.
Thank you. My comments are around the Awapuni Road potential and the development in that location. Forcing traffic down Awapuni Road doesn't necessarily have any additional adverse impact to developing in that area, because the majority of the road frontage there is already developed. It's actually very much a rear block development that would be occurring in that space. It's not the road frontage, and actually it backs onto our cycle and walkway network. So there is more potential for that development to face away from Awapuni Road than to face toward it. And considering the volumes of vehicles that currently come past Wainui development, it's not necessarily a detractor from developing in that area. It's just a fact of life. So I think it's still absolutely viable and not in opposition to developing in that area.
Thank you. Councillor Akuhata Brown.
I guess my question is to us as council, when you do have a unique situation of an Awapuni residential zone and an industry zone connecting together, I guess I can declare I live in the commercial zone of that space, so the impact of commercial around me is constant. Do we do a check on the industry movement through that space? Like there's nights when the truck movements are higher and the impact of noise, air pollution, and those factors grow, and then other times it's not. So as staff, do we, other than a request for service to investigate, is there a monitoring in that space because of the residents who live in that space? And also, you know, as a ratepayer, you know, there's issues around, I know for a fact that other parts of New Zealand, the New Zealand Transport Agency helps support putting in double glazed or motorway spaces out of region. So, and that doesn't happen here, but, you know, just as far as making sure ratepayers who live in those zones are respectively, you know, cared for or monitored. Does that happen from our end as far as checking in to see how they're all doing? I don't even know who I'm asking at all. Anyone?
Through the chair, I do know with new residential development that NZTA usually participates quite actively in terms of mitigating some of the effects of heavy vehicles, so through reverse sensitivity requirements and new builds and the like, if our plan provides it. And I don't know our plan to that level of detail that we enable that. In terms of monitoring and other movements, I might defer to Dave.
Mr. Wilson.
Through you, Madam Chair, for Awapuni Road, when Tairawhiti Roads completed the AC works, the business case, we went out and did noise control measurements at different times of the day to look and see if intervention was required. That made up part of the business case for what was being done. So if we're proposing works, if we're looking at works that are looking where we've had a number of complaints, then yes, we will go out and check. The air quality, I'll leave to Helen around our air quality points, but we don't have any issues on any of our roads at the moment from what's been happening.
Any more kōrero? Otherwise, I will ask the CEO there a few words that she constructed after Councillor Seymour talked about adopting. So Nadine, if you can read those words and we can just see that everyone is comfortable with those.
So the recommendation would be to adopt the recommendations outlined on page 3 of the WSP Opus Gisborne Freight Group's report, full stop, and to instruct staff to carry out consultation on the recommended options.
So what we are saying is, we've seen this report, we adopt the recommendations they make, and this is a tool for us to go out to our community now and say, what do you think of this? Do we have a time frame for this consultation, Ms. Corpere?
Not yet, we will come back with the consultation stage.
Thank you. Do you want a right of reply, Councillor Seymour? No, I'll put it to the table. We've got to move in Councillor Seymour, seconder Councillor Balberdette, all in favour, contrary, carried. Thank you. I declare this meeting closed. I welcome everyone to our extraordinary council meeting. We've got the same apologies, Councillor Warsnop. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Faulkner, seconded by Councillor Sheldrake. All in favour, contrary, carried. Declaration of interest. Hey, can everyone just focus? Declaration of interest, leave of absence, acknowledgements and tributes, public input and petition, no extraordinary business, no notice of this. I take everyone to page 4, where we will have Nadine and Di. Welcome, Di, to the table. Just give us a quick overview. Welcome, James. And then we will open the floor up for discussion. We also welcome our colleagues from GHL in the back. And the floor is yours.
Through the chair, so came clear during the appointment process at the end of last year that there were 2 directors that had served terms longer than allowed for under our 2018 policy. So basically what we've come back with today is a few options, but we really want to know what you want to do. So,
right. So in this report, as you can see, it's all clearly set out, and there are 3 options in the report. Option 1 is allow all current directors to complete their current term, which is the status quo. Option 2, remove current directors whose terms do not comply with the policy immediately. That's option 2. Option 3, allow the current directors whose term do not comply with the policy to remain until the service review is completed. And this is what staff recommend. At this stage, GHL and GDC are just in final discussions on the service review, which staff says will be finished end of April.
Yes, it's estimated to be about that time. So at the moment, the service review proposal has also been gone to the CE of GHL. There were no changes from that, so we're making that available on Docs and Tax for you all to have a look at.
Fabulous, thank you for that. What's that? Good day. Okay, any discussions? Councillor Seymour, you were first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It would have been helpful if we'd seen the document before today, because then we would have been in a position to have made some observations. So I do think that the fact that it hasn't been made available to us does limit our ability to participate in that conversation. And I note the comment the Chief Executive made with respect to audit, but I don't see it as a similar process to audit. Audit is an annual process that we undertake every year. This is the first review that we have ever had of our CCO, or our CCTO now. So I just think that for future, I'd like you to ensure that the councillors have the opportunity to see the document before it becomes a fait accompli. So I'd suggest to you that it is now a fait accompli. And failing that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to suggest and move option 3.
And I just want to say to all councillors that once you've taken a look today at the review in terms of reference, please feel free to shoot anything back at me, because I'm interviewed tomorrow. So if there's anything that you see there that you would like me to raise specifically on behalf of councillors, please do that just before tomorrow morning 10. Mrs. Thatcher-Swan, you wanted to reply?
No, I will. Through your worship, that's entirely the time when they will receive the terms of. I'll actually probably want to deal with that after dealing with the issue that's on the table. Sorry.
So we've got a mover. Councillor Seymour, you moved option 3 as, so you've moved what is in front of us on page 5 of 47. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Dowsing. Any discussion? Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I think where we've got ourselves tangled up here is that we've generated policy and not created an implementation plan for any changes in that policy. And I think this is our opportunity to implement that policy how we see fit for the future. What I would personally like to see in terms of how we handle director retirements in the future is that we do not do 2 retirements both in October each time. I feel that we would have a preference for always retaining one for their knowledge, and potentially, you know, we may develop a preference for how we treat those scenarios. So I would rather see a director retire each 6 months. So we'd be doing 2 per year. That would also tie in nicely with the process that we've just moved and seconded, which means that in April we would look at the first retirement of the year, and then in October the second, which essentially fits with our current planning anyway. So it seems like we have a sensible way forward to approach the retirements, and that also ties up our requirement to do a 3-yearly instead of what potentially, because of the previous format for retirements, gave an offering of up to 5-year, which I don't think is desired anymore. So I think that's a sensible way forward. And offers us the opportunity to go forward from here with the right rotation.
Thank you. Councillor Akuhata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just not a lot to add. I have to leave. Thank you for this, and I want to thank the staff. Obviously, this has been an interesting process that we've developed and unpacking and making better of. So always good to see that happening. Everything in this space is always about relationships and ensuring that the mechanism of moving forward, succession, and all those frameworks are done well. So that would be my only, I guess, in my social caring space, ensuring that the value of knowledge and all the adage that these people have given to us is acknowledged, but also, as Councillor Dowsing as eloquently put. We need to ensure that we get this right for future, so we're not in these tangled moments. So I want to thank staff for this, and the recommendation I believe is the best for the in the now. So on that note, I will wish you all a good day, and see you later.
Councillor Robinson.
My preference is for option 2, for the reason that the downsides, actually the upside outweigh the downside quite significantly. If we were to retire Peter Reeves now, and he's retired, he's gone, he can't restand. And
Point of order, Madam Chair, it's not normal for us to discuss people by name in our agenda. So if we're discussing people by name or by appointment, we've normally gone into committee. So can we respect, can you instruct a mechanism to protect the privacy? Yep.
Okay, so if the person who's been there the longest, who can't restand, doesn't restand, which would be a given, and the other person, the other director, was to express an interest. And on the back of the process we've just done with the most recent appointment or reappointment, I think the energy and the more recentness and the potential people who applied but didn't get the position, I think now would be a really opportune time to actually put it out there again to the community to replace or sort out this issue right now, and bring our policy into alignment with the constitution of the CCTO, and also because we are doing the what do you call it, letter of intent. I think it's right. Sorry.
No, I say soon. Yeah, letter of intent is soon. Yeah.
So I think like it's the perfect timing to get everything lined up and sorted out all in one hit. I like the fact that paragraph 29 it talks about removing these directors would ensure all remaining GHR directors would be serving compliance with the policy. That there was at paragraph 30, the benefits include compliance with the policy and an opportunity to potentially reconfigure the board aligning to the policy, which is all sort of in the now for the letter of intent. So rather than sorting out our housekeeping now and then later on, potentially at the end of the year, sorting it out again, doesn't seem to make sense to me. But so my personal preference is option 2.
So any other discussion? We do have a recommendation on the table that was moved and seconded. Councillor Sheldrake.
I don't agree. I support option 3. I think, what's history is history. It's been a mess. It's been tidied up. I think the process is quite short, the time frame. So I absolutely support option 3.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'll put to the table. So how it works, if we appoint people, just for our new people, if we vote, you put your hand up. So if we are talking about people that we appoint, we don't use a voice vote, we use a hand. So we have got 6 recommendations on the table at this stage. So we have got 1, note that the 2 directors have served longer terms than permitted under the current policy, notes that there's a service review being undertaken. 3, agree to option 3, allow the 2 directors to remain as directors limited until 30 April 2020, in brackets when the service review being undertaken are completed, and instructs the chief executive to advise them accordingly. 4, instructs the CE to prepare an amendment of the Gisborne Holdings Limited Constitution to include an appointment tenure in accordance with the board appointments and remuneration policy, and report back to council as the shareholder for approval. 5, instructs the chief executive to call a special general meeting on behalf of the shareholder to be held after the completion of the 17A service review, but no later than the 2020 annual general meeting. 6, notes the contents of this report. All in favour, hand. Councillor Seymour, you can have your right of reply.
And I think it's a point of clarity for everyone's benefit, because if we are going to stick to that date in April,
yes,
is it anticipated that anything in the service level review will potentially change the number of directors? Because just as you read the comment, because we can begin the process of appointment, because we take forever to make appointments. And so if we know that that 2 appointments are going to expire at the end of April, there's nothing to stop us starting the appointment process at the beginning of March. calling for nominations, etc. But my question, and I'm sure we're all thinking of it, are you anticipating any recommendation, and how do we know? Because we don't know what the TOR is saying.
Is there any anticipation that the number of trustees would, is that part of the level 17A review to look at the, no?
No. So therefore, and which would help everyone, there's the potential to begin the process in March, for example, of reappointment of further directors.
Nothing stops us, I'm sure. Okay, so all in favour, hands up, please. And I will read out the names. So Jill, it is Burdett, Gregory, Cranston, Dowsing, Dunn, Wharehinga, Foster, Faulkner, Seymour, Sheldrake, Stoltz. Thank you. Contrary? Carried. Thank you, everyone. And
point of order again. Yep.
Contrary, you didn't put his hand up.
Yes, he did eventually.
Oh, sorry, Robinson, contrary. So what I ask now, I'm going to call this meeting to a close very soon. We're going to have, so I'll give everyone a little break. We're just going to have a short chat with our CEO, and then just a short chat, just councillors. It won't take more than 10 minutes. So I'm just going to give everyone 5 minutes to stretch their legs, and then we'll come back for a chat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, as well. Yes. Yes, we're going to, yep, we're just, in 5 minutes, we come back.